Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today for our motivational interviewing for HPV vaccination webinar. My name is Carmen Boone. I'm an education coordinator from Oregon Pacific Area Health Education Center, a hosted agency of Samaritan Lebanon Community Hospital. Today, I will be your host and moderator, and we'll have Christine Runyan and Colleen Marshall as our presenters today. Let's go over some housekeeping items. On your GoToWebinar control panel, you will notice that all microphones are muted. They'll remain muted during the session. If you have problems with the audio, make sure your computer speaker volume is turned up or use the phone option to listen in. You can download the slides from the handouts panel. If you are having any trouble or you need the handouts in another way, please send me an email and I'll send them to you. So we will email them by request. Please use the questions option for typing questions or comments at any time. We'll be answer questions at the end, but also if needed during the lesson. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website. You can see the link there. And if you have any questions, please send me an email. You should have received an email reminder and my email address is there. Now, to obtain CME or CE credit for this activity, you must log into www.eeds.com and enter this activity code. Write it down for your records, and again, email me if you have any trouble. Now, this presentation is jointly provided by the National AIDS Organization, the American Cancer Society, Samaritan Health Services, and the Oregon Pacific Area Health Education Center. Colleen Marshall and the planners of this activity report that we have no conflict of interest or relevant financial relationships with any commercial entities that might affect the contents of this presentation. And this webinar will be presented by Colleen Marshall and Christine Runyan. Today we have Christine as our guest, or Tina as our guest, and she will tell us more about Colleen. So I'll leave you now with Colleen and Tina.
Thank you so much, Carmen, and thank you to Oregon Pacific Area Health Education Center for sponsoring this really, I think, important webinar and topic for HPV vaccination. I'm Tina Runyan, and I am the co-founder of Tend Health. At Tend Health, we are extremely passionate about well-being and mental health services for health professionals. And part of that, just to sort of make the connection with HPV vaccination, is kind of recognizing that health professionals are really on the hook for being demonstrating that they are achieving high levels of vaccination for the populations that they serve. And it's one of the things that can sometimes feel like a pressure, feel like, how do we do that? And so part of it is to try to resource you with tools and strategies for how to work with really the parents of your patients to increase vaccination rates, or to ensure that you are vaccinating all the patients from a truly informed consent process, and that they have all the information they need to make a decision that's in their child's best interest in terms of their health. So with that, I'm delighted to bring you today Colleen Marshall. Colleen is a licensed marriage and family therapist and has been a senior leader in behavioral health and behavior change, service delivery and management for more than 15 years. She's a consultant for startup organizations and healthcare organizations who are looking to implement motivational interviewing into the work. And currently she serves as the behavioral health director for a startup company called Well. She has specific expertise in behavior change, specifically motivational interviewing, and has applied this in other startup organizations, training in one organization, growing a team of 20 coaches to 300 coaches using motivational interviewing strategies for talking about end-of-life care, and did that in 4 short years. She is a member of the board of Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, also called MINT. It's the international organization founded by the founders of motivational interviewing, who have as its mission to ensure very high quality dissemination and delivery of motivational interviewing. She served as the chair and treasurer of MINT, and most recently is a co-author of a book of motivational interviewing for leaders in helping professionals, facilitating change in organizations. So we are delighted to have her here with us today and to bestow us with all of her knowledge and expertise and guidance on how to use motivational interviewing strategies related to HPV vaccination. Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks, Tina. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining in this, this really important conversation. And as Carmen said, please feel free to ask questions. You can do that in the question part of your webinar. You can also chat if there's anything that you'd like to comment on or share a thought, but feel free to please share or ask questions as we go. But since we only have a short hour together, I'm going to jump right in. We're going to cover 2 main things today. So this is the overview of what we'll be talking about. We're going to talk about the frames model of having an HPV conversation. When you look at the research, what you'll find is the 2 evidence-based approaches that are most often recommended to use in a vaccination conversation is either frames or motivational interviewing. And we're going to talk about the concept of motivational interviewing and model it slightly with the EPE strategy of motivational interviewing to give you guys a sense of what the frames might look like, sound like, and what motivational interviewing might look like and sound like, and also sort of connect what are the common themes between these 2 models, why do we think they're most effective, excuse me, in helping people choose what's right for them and their family. And we'll do some demonstration. Tina's going to play a mother for us, and we'll hopefully show you a little bit of what it might look like. And then we'll end with about 10 minutes or so of question and answer so that you guys can certainly ask any questions that you have, and we can try to address them if we can. So let's jump right in. So frames, just to separate, is not motivational interviewing, but it has some of the same tenets of it, MI. So we're going to talk about it briefly and then do a quick demo. But what frames is, it's a model that's based on, the research is pretty clear that one of the main reasons people choose to have vaccinations is because there's a strong physician recommendation to do so. And so frames leans on that research, that it wants to make sure that there's a strong clinical recommendation to the family, but yet it still supports autonomy supportive strategies and empathetic strategies, which is similar to what motivational interviewing does as well. And so the frames is the acronym. It starts with first feedback of personal risk. And you can use this for other things, not just vaccinations, but we're going to use our examples and explain it in an HPV model. So we want to explain and make people understand who's at risk and why is this vaccination important, and zero in on what the recommendation is for the child in front of us. And the conversation obviously we're having is with the parent most often. And then we want to make sure we're clear about who's the responsibility for change. So with HPV, we're talking about the decision to get a vaccination. We're not actually talking about more complicated behavior change. In other ways, when you're using the frames model, you might be talking about actual behavior change like losing weight or quitting smoking or something along those lines. Here, we're just supporting someone's decision-making process and helping them decide, and really making statements and emphasizing that the responsibility to make this decision and to get the vaccination is in the lap of the caregiver. They're the ones that get to decide if this is right or not. So even though we're making a strong medical recommendation, we are not the ones that can decide for them. And then this is where the doctor's strong recommendation wants to come in, is we do want to provide the medical recommendation to make sure it's authoritative and clear. And if we can, we want to provide that in a menu of options or a menu of strategies. So letting the person know that many different ways that they can do this so that they have some freedom of choice and they can make the decision as to what's best for their family. If there's not a menu of strategies, then we would skip this stage, but with HPV, there's actually some options that we have. We also want to make sure that we're not judging, lecturing, or telling people what to do. Instead, we're trying to provide information, letting them choose what's best for them, and then using empathy to really understand what their perspective is, how they feel about this specific topic, and try to understand it from their perspective. And so you'll see empathy is also something that's strongly emphasized when we talk about motivational interviewing, and it's highly correlated to helping people make change in their lives. And also highly correlated to trusting their physicians. So we want to make sure that we're really understanding what empathy means and how do you demonstrate that. And when we do the MI demonstration, you'll see a little bit more of the skill involved with what we use, the complex reflections, as a skill to really empathize and understand what someone else's perspective may be. And then the last part is promoting self-efficacy, which is just the belief that the person's own belief that they can make this change. And so we want to take the opportunity to support and promote the person's belief in change. So again, with HPV, we're not talking about a more complicated behavior change like smoking or weight loss. We're talking about the decision to make what's right for their family and supporting that. So here's just some examples of what frames might sound like. So with the feedback of personal risk, we might say something like, would it be okay if we talk about HPV for a few minutes? And then HPV vaccinations are geared at preventing future cancers, especially in children the age 10 to 11. And then the responsibility of the patient is you're the only one that can decide whether this vaccination is right for you and your child. Advice to change. However, it is a strong recommendation by the CDC, and if you're a physician and myself, that your child does get an HPV vaccination between the ages of 11 to 12. And then offering the menu of strategies, you could do that now, between the ages of 9 or 12. You could wait 6 months if you'd like. We could also do it at the next physical. And just so you know that there's 2 doses before their 15th birthday and then 3 doses after that. So what sounds best to you, or how do you feel about that, and listen to the family's response, and then respond to whatever they're sharing with you. But here's an example of an empathetic response that you could give. Is deciding what's best for your family can be really hard. And then promoting the self-efficacy. Your health and family seems very important to you. You're doing what you think is best. So just from a high level, that's sort of the model. We're going to demonstrate it for you now so you can see that it's really more of a conversation. It's not a list of things you're going to say specifically. It's more of a dialogue that you're going to have with the mother or your patient. So Tina's going to play her mom, and I'm going to leave this frames up here so you can just kind of follow along with the different strategies that you'll hopefully see me demonstrate. So Tina, thank you so much for bringing your daughter in today. I so appreciate you guys taking time to come on out.
Oh yeah, it's fun. I always love bringing her for a well child check because she's doing so great at school and in soccer, and so yeah.
Yeah,
nice.
She is. She's an active little healthy girl, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it was easy to come today because I said today's not a shot visit. No shots today.
Wow, yes, that made it easier to get her in the car for sure.
Yeah.
Would it be okay if we talk for just a minute? I want to talk to you about HPV vaccinations, and I just heard the no shot, so we're not talking necessarily have to talk about it for this visit, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about HPV vaccinations. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I don't know that she I don't know that much about it, but I mean she's only 11, so so yeah, we can talk about it. But
yeah, you're a little confused why we're talking about it because she's only 11 and you're not sure about it, and have a little bit of information. Well, what is actually, and it's going to be up to you to decide what's best for your daughter, and what you think is right for her always. I just want to make sure you have the information so that you can decide what you want to do for you and your family.
okay.
And what the CDC actually tells us is we want to vaccinate children between the ages of 11 and 12. Actually, what we really want to do is try to vaccinate them before they're sexually active. And that tends to be the age where we want to gear at. So I'm wondering what you think about that.
Yeah, well, I think we have a few years with her. I mean, she's such a kid still. So I don't think we're close to that yet.
Yeah. It seems strange to be thinking of an 11-year-old. Why are we talking about sexual activity right now? Yeah. And what the research is really clear is if we can do it before there's even a chance or a hint of it, it's much more likely to prevent future cancers. And so there are options that you can consider. We certainly can, do the vaccination at her next physical when she's 12. That would still be in that same window. You can definitely wait if you prefer to wait. You can do that. Just know that the closer that she gets to 15, after 15, there's 3 doses instead of 2. And my recommendation would be that you get the vaccination either this year or next year. And we could even schedule an appointment within, before her next physical too, if that fits for you all.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I did tell her no shots today, so I don't really want to go back on my word about that or make the doctor a place she doesn't want to come because of that. So, yeah, can we just put it on the list for next year, and I'll make sure that I keep my mouth shut and not tell her no shots.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I'm okay with her getting it. I think I just didn't realize it was going to be this early, because that also means she's going to ask why, what's it for? It's not for mumps or measles, and then we're going to have a conversation about sex. It's a whole thing. So,
yeah, and it sounds like you're just really wanting to take sort of the whole picture into account. You want her to come to the doctor's office. You want to honor your word. You want to make sure that she gets vaccinated for things that are important for you all to get vaccinated on, and you're wanting to have all this information. So really waiting a year feels like what's right for you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that fits completely fine also with what the recommendations are. So we can go ahead and put it on, and then at our next physical we can take a look at it then.
Okay, that sounds good.
Great, thanks. Great. So you'll just notice there was a lot of emphasizing on both the medical advice and a lot of emphasizing on Tina's perspective of what she wants for her daughter. So I'm trying to use that model to both support autonomy and choice, but also be really clear on what the medical advice is. So now we're going to shift, and we're going to spend a little bit longer time with motivational interviewing. It's a little bit of a longer process to learn MI. But we're going to talk about the overview and why MI sort of came out of the literature and what's the best ways to be thinking about it. And then we'll show an example of how we could use it in HPV conversation as well. So fundamentally, the premise underneath motivational interviewing is really around why do people change or why don't people change? So I want you all to think about this for yourself for just a minute. Think about something in your life that you know that maybe you should be doing. Maybe you're supposed to be exercising a little more than you are, or getting more sleep than you are, or maybe you're supposed to be flossing your teeth more regularly than you do. And think about for a minute for yourself, why is that not happening? Why aren't you changing that specific behavior? And my guess is if you are all unmuted and we're sharing your experience, and I asked you, well, is it because you don't have the knowledge? So let's just use flossing our teeth as an example. Is it because you don't know that you're supposed to be flossing your teeth? Has someone not shared with you the risks of not flossing your teeth? And my guess is most of you are shaking your head no, it's really not about knowledge. Every time I go to the dentist, they lecture me about flossing my teeth, so it's not about the knowledge. So the next question is, well, what is it about the skill? Maybe you haven't been shown how. Maybe you don't know how to floss your teeth. No one's really taken the time to give you the materials or the resources or taught you how to do it. Again, my guess is you're shaking your head saying no, it's not about the skill. In fact, nowadays they even have those little wand things that you don't even have to wrap around your finger anymore. It's fairly easy to floss my teeth. So it's not about that either. It's not knowledge, it's not skill. So then is it about something wrong with your personality or your character? Are you, pretty stubborn? Are you somebody that doesn't do what you're supposed to be doing? Is it sort of a personality flaw? And my guess is we're nodding our head no again, saying, well, there's not really anything wrong with me. Yeah, I do actually like to make my own choices, but no, I'm not stubborn. It's not a personality issue. So if it's not knowledge, it's not skill, and it's not something wrong with us, then why don't we do and make the changes that are better for our health? It's because it's something else. And what motivational interviewing does is it tells us that at the core of behavior change, and in this situation, we're talking about a decision, which MI can be used for decisions as well. It's really because we're ambivalent. And ambivalent is the idea of feeling about something in two different ways at the same moment. So I love this image. I think it describes ambivalence the best. So on the one hand, there are reasons we want to do this thing. There are reasons I want to floss my teeth. I certainly don't want to have dentures. I don't want to have bleeding gums. There's all these reasons I really want to. And on the other side, there's reasons I don't want to. I really don't, like the inconvenience of it or having to worry about it. And I'm usually rushing in the morning as it is. And just another thing to add to my list. And underneath this, when we're thinking about what's already inside of us, that's this natural ambivalence, that when someone is faced with a behavior change, we're naturally ambivalent. We're weighing in our own minds the reasons we should and could change, and the reasons we don't want to and don't think we can change. And underneath this is these three questions that we're asking ourselves. Should I? Is this important enough for me to actually do this? Can I? This is that self-efficacy piece again. Do I believe I could do this thing that we're talking about? And then will I? Am I ready? Is the timing right? Do I have readiness to do that? And so if we think of ambivalence as normal and it's fundamental, the first part of change, then we want to think about, well, then why do people change? What tips this ambivalence and helps people make a decision to do something? And it falls into sort of three big buckets: importance, confidence, and readiness. And so on the importance side, first they have to recognize there's a problem. And then the benefits have to outweigh, the cost benefits have to outweigh the cost benefits of staying the same. So if I'm going to make this decision, so take the HPV vaccination, for instance, the benefits of getting the HPV vaccination, of preventing future cancers, has to outweigh the inconvenience or the uncomfortableness of getting the vaccine right now, or my child's discomfort with it, or what Tina just mentioned too, even the conversation about what does HPV have to do with, and how does it, we're having a conversation now about sexual activities possibly. And so that cost benefit analysis is what someone's weighing. And the benefits to do it have to outweigh the benefits of not. Also, someone's values play a huge part in them resolving ambivalence. So sometimes in a clinical strategy, we might actually pair up a specific value to a current behavior to see how that actually helps move a decision in the direction of a change that might be helpful to the person. Underneath that, or another layer of behavior change, is also this idea of confidence or self-efficacy. This is the belief that you can do something, or you believe you can make a change. And the thing with self-efficacy, it's not that you know that you will do this, or even that you have done it in the past. It's just a belief that you do believe this change is possible for you. And people can have both specific and global self-efficacy. So what that means is, on a global level, someone might be a very high self-efficacy, believe they can do most things in their life. In fact, maybe they've accomplished most things that they've set out for themselves in their lives. But when it comes to something specific, like weight loss, for instance, they might have low self-efficacy. So they might believe they can do almost anything they set their mind to, and also believe that they can't lose weight and have low self-efficacy for that specific topic. So we want to be thinking about, what's this confidence, or what does this person believe is possible that they can actually do? And then the final part of this ready, willing, and able dynamic of helping people when someone's ready to change is this commitment or this readiness. So the belief that it's now, that I have an intention to change, I've made a resolve, I've made a decision, and now this is a priority. So it has some urgency to it. It's something that I'm going to actually come up with a plan and start working towards it. So those are the main concepts of thinking about, why does somebody not change, and how do they lead towards change? And what motivational interviewing, it was founded by Bill Miller, who was working with people that had chronic alcoholism. And then it was expanded on by Professor Rolnick, Steve Rolnick from the UK. And they've trained in it now since the late 80s, and really have brought it to different worlds and different target behaviors. And so it's expanded now out of just the substance use world, and it's now being trained in anything really that is a target specific behavior. And what we're talking about today, since we're talking about HPV vaccinations and not actually behavior change, what MI has also been shown can help somebody make a decision and weigh that ambivalence, or weigh what they think is they want to do for themselves or their family. So even though MI is traditionally used for changing behavior, it has been expanded to be thinking about decision. And the one thing that you do want to keep into account if you're using motivational interviewing for helping someone make a decision is whether or not you can use the strategic parts of motivational interviewing, which is the evoking strategies, which we'll talk about in just a moment, to guide the conversation towards a pro-social choice, because there is influence in that guiding. And what we want to think about is it ethical for me to guide? So for instance, if somebody was coming to you asking, should they have a baby or not, that seems a little clearer that we don't actually have, there is no clear right answer to that question. So we would not want to guide towards a specific answer. We would want instead to stay in what we would call equal position or equipoise, meaning that we just want to help them weigh the pros and cons of their decision. However, with HPV, there is an implied benefit to the person, and there does seem to be a clear reason that it would benefit the mother or the child and the family to help guide the conversation towards deciding to get an HPV vaccination. So it is okay for us to use it in a guiding way. But just to be clear, MI does not make somebody make a decision we want them to make. In fact, it's very important that we realize we have to let go of the outcome and allow people to make the choices that are right for them. But MI is more likely to help them to decide to make this choice to get an HPV vaccination than other approaches. But it is not a panacea. It won't make every person that comes into your office or speaks with you for them to actually decide to have an HPV vaccination. So what MI is, it's a specific collaborative style of talking with someone and guiding a conversation towards a decision and towards change. And so I like this image because it really is this concept of I can help you to solve this for yourself. So we're using all the person's own natural insights, ideas for solutions, their own beliefs in themselves, and we're bringing that forward. And so what gets in our way often is we have this instinct inside of us that if you see this picture, I think this is a great metaphor of this instinct. If you don't sail, and I asked you, what do you want to do with this picture? Most often what people say is they want to make the boat upright. They want to tip the scale up a little bit and get that boat to be more stable. And best case scenario, if we did that, the boat would stop moving because actually right now it's catching the wind and it's what's actually moving that boat. But worst case scenario, the boat actually tips over, which is what we're trying to prevent. And that instinct to fix or to make right is called our righting reflex. And it's something that we have because we're caring people. And when you care and you want to help, our instinct is to persuade people to do what's in their best interest. So we start saying things like you should, or we give them advice, or we think about all the information that we think will convince them to make this change. And the problem with that is if we go back to that first question I asked you about why don't you change, more often than not, giving advice or persuading someone or with education or confrontation or direction, even though it comes from a good intention, is not helpful. It does not help somebody actually to make a change or to make a decision that is not in line with what they really want in their own values. And what ends up happening is our client actually ends up arguing against the change. So if you think back to that image of the ambivalence, we want to keep in mind that the client already has in their own mind both arguments to change and not change. And so if we take the side of the argument of why they need to change or do what we think is best for them, the only thing that's left is for them to argue the other side of their ambivalence because nobody else is taking that side. And we then start thinking they're difficult. We might call them resistant. We might think they're in denial. And so all this negative dynamic happens all because our righting instinct of trying to tell someone what to do or persuade or give advice is in the way of actually helping them choose a behavior or make a decision that is in their best interest. And so what we want to do is actually resist that righting reflex, acknowledge it, understand that we have it. We all do, and you know, I can tell you for myself, it's right at the tip of my tongue very often when I'm talking with somebody. And to just realize it's not my ideas. People are actually generally better persuaded by the reasons which they themselves discovered than by those which have come into the mind of others. And so that's the idea, is we really want to be thinking about what is most important to this person in front of me? How do I bring that to the table and to the surface? And how do we expand upon that? And so this image is my favorite metaphor for describing what the spirit or the way we interact, or the belief system we have about people when we choose to use motivational interviewing. And the picture, the way the story goes is someone asked Michelangelo, how did you create the David? And Michelangelo's answer was, I didn't create David. David was actually already in the marble, I just brought him out. And that's the idea we want to be thinking about with motivational interviewing, is our patients come to us already have everything they need. They don't need us to give them a bunch of advice. We don't need to tell them what to do. We don't need to persuade them to think about it our way. But we may need to guide a conversation where they can get access to those strengths, those skills, those solutions themselves. And that's not to say that there aren't times we're going to provide information. In fact, today we're going to show you with the EP model how we do that, because certainly when they come to a physician's office, sometimes they are looking for specific information. But we want to lean on really trusting that this person knows what's best for them. The person has their own solutions and ideas, and our job is to try to figure out how to bring that to the surface. And so what motivational interviewing is, the layperson's definition is, it's a collaborative conversation, and it's for strengthening a person's own motivation and commitment to change. Or if you want a more, the practitioner's definition, it's a person-centered counseling style for addressing the common problem of ambivalence about change. And so at the core, before we even talk about strategy or skill with motivational interviewing, is we need to be really clear about what we call as the spirit. I think another way to think about it is your mindset or heart set, how you interact with people, and what you're basing all of your skill foundation on. And so there's four letters that we talk about with motivational interviewing: spirit, collaboration, compassion, acceptance, and evocation. And so what collaboration is that it's a person-centered approach, meaning and a partnership with the person in front of me, meaning that this conversation is about what's in best interest of the person I'm speaking to. And it's a partnership. So there's going to be equal power in this conversation. I'm going to use my expertise to provide what I can provide, and they're an expert on their lives and what's best for them. And underneath this is this idea that MI is not done on or to people, it is actually done for and with. So I'm using all my skill and all the training I have in motivation to help somebody decide what's best for them. Acceptance means I want to accept this person's worldview and accept their absolute worth. Whether I disagree with them or whether I see the world differently doesn't matter. I don't want to judge how they see their worldview. So if somebody doesn't believe in vaccinations, I want to understand that versus argue with them and try to convince them to see it my way. If somebody wants to do something like the example we just had with Tina, where they want to wait a little while, I want to accept their worldview of how it is. It doesn't mean I have to agree with what their worldview is, but I want to understand it. I want to have accurate empathy, which is a skill of really making sure I'm understanding and reflecting back what I believe they mean and how they feel, so that my job is to understand and show and express understanding so that they feel that I'm getting it from their perspective. I also want to provide autonomy support, which means I want to emphasize that they have choice and control over their lives, over their decisions, and over what's best for them. So the same way the frames had the patient as the one responsible for the change, in motivational interviewing, we want to make active statements, letting the person know it's really up to them. They're the only one that can decide this, and that we'd be happy to provide information, but it's really up to them to decide what they want to do. And then affirmation is supporting the strength, the intention, the strength of character, the progress they're making. All of those types of things are ways to build strength so that the person has more self-efficacy and believes that they can do more than they thought the day before. We also want to have compassion, which means having a deliberate commitment to promoting the welfare of others and giving it a priority. So different than empathy, compassion adds an action to it. So we want to really have everything we're doing to be in the best interest of the person in front of us. And then evocation is we want the person, our patient, to be the one actually arguing for change, for coming up for the reasons they want to do this. And we want to evoke and strengthen that when it's present. But we do not want to be the ones that are arguing for change or trying to get in a negative dynamic with our client. We just want to support them. And so just to talk a little bit more about accurate empathy, acceptance, fundamental part of acceptance is this idea of expressing accurate empathy. So it's active interest in understanding the other person. And we use reflective listening, or skillful reflective listening is fundamental to that. Because what we want to do is really express that we understand, or at least that we're trying to understand what they're sharing with us. And you saw me do that a little bit with Tina, and in the frames model as well, is just really reflecting back what I believe she's sharing and what it means to her. So what is reflective listening? At the core, it invites more dialogue. It reflects both content, but also the feeling or the emotion underneath it. It also reflects what is not being said. So sometimes it's the pauses in the conversation, or you're making a guess or a hunch about what you believe the person means. It's okay to be wrong, because we're trying to understand. And the more we use reflections to express what we believe the person sharing with us, the more likely they are to actually share more and help us get closer and closer to really understanding what they want. And it also is clarifying our assumptions. So motivational interviewing should feel like a dance and not a wrestling match. It should feel like something where we're kind of, that we're guiding a conversation and the person is right in tow with us and that we're on the same page, but not necessarily something that feels like a struggle or that we're trying to be the expert and convincing them to do something. So outside of the spirit, so the spirit's the foundation of what all of MI is based on, and without it, actually MI can be used for unethical reasons and actually not produce the results that we see in all the research and all the articles about how effective MI can be. If we don't have the spirit as the heart of how we're doing things, we won't get the outcomes that we are looking for. So outside of that, it's also the process, and the process is really 4 processes that build on one another, meaning that one starts and the other one follows, but we go back and forth based on what's happening in the conversation as well. So they're linear and recursive in nature. And so it starts with the engaging process. And engaging basically means is we're trying to build a trusting, respecting, and compassionate, non-judgmental relationship with the person we're speaking to. And at the core is we're trying to accurately understand their ambivalence and accurately understand their experience. And engaging doesn't go away. It's part of the full process. Even when we move up in the processes, we're always going to keep this idea of our core importance is for us to understand and express understanding. Next is that it's focusing or being really having a target that we're guiding towards. So in this case with HPV, it's fairly simple. Our target is, do they or do they not want to have an HPV vaccination? So we don't need to do a lot to train on how to focus in this situation. But in other situations where you're using motivational interviewing, focusing is a process of its own. And then after we focus, then we have this other process of evoking, which is really drawing out the motivation from the person. We want to specifically listen for change talk. We want to draw out more and more change talk and evoke around change talk, because ultimately we want the client to be talking themselves into change and the client being the one to argue for change. And we'll talk about change talk in just a minute, because I know this may be a new concept for many of you. And once we hear commitment, once somebody actually is expressing that they are ready to do this, they will do it, they're taking steps, they're making plans, then we move into the final process of MI, which is the planning stage. And why it's so important to know these 4 processes is so often we jump from engaging straight to planning and we miss this whole middle section of evoking the motivation, and then we don't get effective health results as we were hoping. So what is this change talk stuff? Well, what motivational interviewing does actually is, very regularly people think, well, if I do motivational interviewing, it's going to lead to change. And that's actually not true. What motivational interviewing does is actually produces this very specific language that in the research is really clear. It's the presence of change language that actually leads to change. And so what motivational interviewing does is it helps us hear and explore, and the client hear actually themselves, more of this specific language called change language. And so what change language is we use acronyms a lot to describe this, but DARN is the first part of change language, which DARN's is the acronym for desire, ability, reasons, and need, and in the direction of change. So I want to get an HPV vaccination for my child because I would like them not to have, future trouble with cancer. So desire is I want to. Ability is I can, or I think I can. Reasons are just the if-thens. If I do this, these good things will happen. If I don't do this, these bad things will happen. And the need is the language around urgency, like I must do this, I have to do it now type of conversation. And when we hear change language, or this preparatory change language, the DARNs, it actually starts producing a different kind of change language, which is commitment language. And commitment are things like I will, or I'm taking steps, or which actually is what ends up producing change. And so it's this focus on this language and being really understanding the presence of it is critical to supporting change, and not missing the opportunity when it shows up to make sure that we reflect it, we understand it, and we ask for more of it. And so here's the change language again, just in the 2 different kinds that we talked about. So desire is I want to, I wish I could, ability is I can, reasons are anything that's, if good things will happen if I do, bad things happen if I don't, and need is I really need to, or the urgency. And then the other side, which is where we see the readiness and we know it's time to go for planning, is language around I'm going to, I will, I intend to, I plan to, or I am, or I did, or I'm taking steps already. And so at the core, with what we want to be listening for is there's really three kinds of language that we're going to hear in conversations about change. There's the change talk language, which it falls into two categories. So we're going to either hear conversation in the direction of wanting to, thinking they can change, or we're going to hear language in the opposite direction, so the ambivalence language about why they want to stay the same, what they think they don't think they can do. And we may also hear this other part of the conversation, which is actually relationship indicated, which we call discord, which means there's something in the relationship where the person's feeling judged, pushed, somehow there's a discord or a brokenness in our relationship. And so if we pay attention to language, it helps us guide as practitioners where we are, what's happening with the client, and what's the best way to guide the conversation forward. And so Tina and I are going to show you just an example of what discord could sound like, just simply by us doing our actively engaging someone in the conversation, but to also so you can see what some of these examples of what a relationship discord might sound like in your conversations. So thanks, Tina.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to talk for a minute about why I think your daughter getting this vaccination now might be better than waiting. Would that be okay if we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, we can talk about it. I mean, I told her that she wasn't having any shots today in coming to her physical, so she was totally fine to come. I didn't get any fight from her, so that's she's not getting any shots today.
Yeah, no, I understand that. My concern though is so often kids actually, something happens down the road where if we did something now, we could prevent her from having, cancer down the road. And if we miss this opportunity and something happens, my guess is you're going to feel guilty that you didn't do it now.
You think she can get cancer like in the next year from this?
She could. I mean, there are lots of things that can happen. I know you're saying she's not sexually active, but there are ways that kids can experience or experiment with things, and then they can end up.
No, my kid, no, she's definitely not even interested in boys. She might even be interested in girls. I don't know. Like, she's definitely not even thinking about that. If you're implying that she might become sexually active in the next year, I think we're safe there.
Yeah, I hear you saying that you don't want it, but I just have to tell you, it just makes me nervous. Like for one small inconvenience of getting the shot now, it just would be something that's sort of checked off the list, and you don't have to worry about it down the road. And she might be a little mad that she got a shot, but it seems like, it really might be something that you want to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it, but I'm thinking that we're not going to do it. It might be checked off your list, but I think it's important to me that I told her no shots, and she needs to trust me as her mom. And I feel really strongly that she's just a kid. She's gonna, as long as I can keep her a kid, I'm gonna keep her a kid. So I appreciate your concern, but I think we're all set.
Okay, great, thanks, Tina. So you can see that the dynamic changed just simply by me trying to stress my opinion. So rather than Tina sort of sharing some of the language we heard her share before about why she actually does want her child to get a vaccination, it turned into us being more combative. So it felt much more like a wrestling match instead of sort of that guiding process. And we were trying to demonstrate this. I mean, it could be anything from just not understanding her perspective or denying or minimizing what she's sharing. So there was a few there that you can see. But when these things are coming up, when you see the client arguing or ignoring, or my favorite one is the pseudo complying, which is them pretending that they're going to do whatever we recommend, and then they come back and they've never done any of the things that we discussed because they just think it's easier to tell us what they think we want to hear. When you see those things, that's a sign that there's something in the relationship where they're feeling judged, pushed, pressured into something. And so we want to stop and attend to the relationship first before we start any other strategy, because we do want people to feel And when we want to believe actually that it is their choice, it's up to them to decide what's best for them and their family. And we're not trying to be pushy or judgmental. We just really want to make sure they have the information and then let them choose what's best for them and that we understand their perspective. And so another model that is similar to frames, but it's in the MI context, is called EPE. And so Tina and I are going to demonstrate this as well. But what EPE stands for is elicit, provide, elicit, excuse me. You may also hear it as CAPE, which is check, autonomy, support autonomy, provide, and elicit. But what it really is what we're trying to do is really support the client's autonomy. If you push, they push back. We know this by martial arts. It takes two to fight. And so we're trying to not be in a pushy dynamic with our clients. We want to understand what they already know. It is useless to be providing for information the person already has. In fact, it undermines our credibility and the trust because they believe and we don't think that they're that bright or have as much skill as they actually do. We want to know what they already believe about HPVs. We want to match our information to the knowledge or the gaps in their knowledge. We do not want to argue with their beliefs. So if they start off by saying something along the lines of, I don't believe in vaccinations, we don't want to get in an arguing match. We may want to understand, what that means, and does that mean for all vaccinations? I might want to understand it a little bit more, but we certainly don't want to get in an argument of arguing with something that they believe. And we want to reflect their reasons for change. In this situation, we're talking about the reasons they're thinking about getting the vaccination. So again, that change language is so precious in motivational interviewing. We want to make sure that we hear it, we listen, and we bring it forward. And we want the client to be the one arguing for change and how it's going to happen. And so this is what it might sound like. Would it be okay if we talk about HPV vaccinations for a few minutes? We do want to wait for the answer, not just start talking. Most likely they're going to say yes. Very rarely they'll say no. And if they do say no, it might be something where they share with you their belief, like, no, I don't want to talk about vaccinations. I don't believe in them. And then you could certainly say, tell me a little bit more about your belief systems and understand your client better. Then we would say, what do you already know about vaccinations? And then we want to reflect and affirm whatever they're sharing. We don't have to agree with what they're sharing. We just want to understand it. Affirming means looking for that strength or a character or a skill that you've seen that you can highlight. So it might be something like, wow, you've really done a lot of research on this, or you really thought about this, and this decision is so important to you. And then the P part is we want to ask permission before we provide. So would it be okay if I told you a little more about the most recent medical recommendations regarding HPV? The decision to get vaccinated will always be yours to make. And then we wait for them to say, sure, that'd be fine. And then we share the most relevant information. What are their gaps? Is there anything related to something that they shared that's important to them that you could match to the knowledge gaps and the HPV information? We don't want to argue with them about something you disagree with, but we want to provide that information. And we want to be as concise as we can. So we want to highlight the most important things we'd like them to know. And then we want to elicit, again, what are their responses to our information. So what do they think about that? How does that change how they think about vaccinations, if at all? Notice at the end I'm saying if at all, because again, we're allowing that autonomy support rather than pressuring people into making a decision. So we're going to go ahead and model this one for you so you can hear what this one sounds like too. And you'll notice that there's a slight difference in the EP and the frames model. The frames model is going to be a little stronger on the medical advice side. This one is going to be much more of a guiding around what Tina wants and thinks is possible with a little bit of information. So that it'll sound maybe similar, but slightly different. So Tina, would it be okay if we talk about HPV vaccinations for a few minutes?
Oh, sure. I did tell my daughter that there was no shots today for this physical, but happy to talk.
Yeah, so it's real important for you to honor that and make sure that she doesn't get shots today.
Yeah, I like the doctor to be a place that she can feel, especially going into her teen years, I want her to feel like comfortable coming in, comfortable bringing things up with you. And so trying to make sure that I kind of honor my my promise to her that she wasn't going to have any shots today is important.
Yeah, so it's bigger than just whether she gets an HPV vaccination or not. You're really trying to set up the doctor-patient relationship in a way that it's healthy for her long-term. And so you're trying to keep that all in mind today.
Yeah, I know that, particularly as she goes into these teenage years, there may be stuff that she doesn't feel comfortable talking to me about. I would feel comfortable talking to her, but she may not feel comfortable talking to me. So I want to make sure she has a safe place to come and a place to get accurate information, because, you know, there's so much bad information out there that is on the internet. So I want her to feel safe coming here.
Yeah, really want that trusted relationship, so she has a trusted adult and a trusted doctor that she can ask.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so tell me what you already know about HPV vaccinations, if anything.
Yeah, well, so, you know, I have my daughter and my son. My son is younger, but I think, so I guess it probably just applies to my daughter, and that it's to prevent cancer. And so, yeah, I definitely, you know, I want to do everything I can for her to prevent cancer. It seems like a little young to be talking about it. She's not interested, you know, in boys at all. She just likes her school and sports and music, and so she seems kind of young, but something that she would get later on.
Yeah. So wow, you've done a lot of research already. So you sort of know it's to prevent cancer. You know it's usually for, my guess is you're saying young because you're saying that she's not sexually active. So you know it's before being sexually active, and that it's recommended for girls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Would it be okay if I share just a little bit more information about sort of what the recent recommendations are and why we're talking about it right now?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So actually what the CDC recommends is that boys and girls get it, and they get it before they're sexually active.
Mm-hmm.
So they target that age of 11 to 12 because typically that's where, you know, it's more likely that child's not sexually active yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of the reasons we're talking about it now is because she's in that age range. So what do you think about that? What, if anything, has that done to influence your thoughts about HPV?
Well, I mean, I don't want her to get cancer, and I want to do everything I can to protect her from cancer. That's my job. I mean, that's my job as a mom, even if it means, you know, a shot. It's my job to protect her. So, yeah, it feels like that's something important. I don't think, I mean, I guess anything could change, but I don't think we're at risk of like her becoming sexually active next week. But it sounds like something that probably needs to happen pretty soon.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's really important to you. I mean, in fact, you see it sort of as a major responsibility of yours to make sure that you're protecting her. And so getting the HPV vaccination is important to you. Yes. The part that you're wondering about right now is the timing of it, because it's also important she doesn't get it today. Right. And you also think that you have a window of being able to get it to her before she's sexually active. So I'm wondering what you're thinking about timing.
I mean, I can, you know, it's going to be a whole conversation with her. She knows, she's so curious, right? She knows, like, if I have to get the chickenpox shot again, or like, what's this for? What's that for? So it's going to be a whole conversation with her. So maybe, you know, it's an opportunity to talk about sex as well. So maybe I can just, I don't know, can I bring her back for it and just sort of make it a day with her? We can have lunch or go for tea or something, and I can bring her just for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you're thinking in a little while, not today, but you want to think and plan for this conversation. So it's not just about getting the vaccination, but you're also sort of taking the opportunity to introduce the topic of sex and, you know, safe sex practices and things like that. And we absolutely could do a whole, you know, a whole meeting about that, where we, you know, both give her the shot, but also talk about any of the safe sex practices you'd like us to cover with her.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess I'm just not ready for that today.
Yeah, seems like it came out of the blue.
It did, but I, you know, it's my job to make sure that, you know, I don't want anything to happen to her that could be preventable. So, so if we can make a separate appointment for that, like, you know, it can happen soon. It doesn't have to wait until next year, like you said, but just so I can prepare myself a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So we'll leave it there, and you can make the appointment when it feels right for you guys, and you know, maybe in the next few months or so, and then we can take it from there.
Okay.
Great. Thanks. All right. So you can see that this is really, there's this idea of, this is kind of what the conversation might flow like. Asking open questions and affirming and reflecting are sort of the core skills we're listening for, and then empathizing, empowering, and then guiding them towards the decision. So in short, the primary goals of motivational interviewing is to support the client's autonomy, choice, and control over their own lives, to help resolve that ambivalence, or in this case, help them decide what's best and what they're for themselves and their family, focus on that change talk, the reasons they want to do this, what they think is possible, minimize resistance, and soften the reasons not to change or the thought, or without ignoring it, attending to discord, making sure our relationship is healthy enough to have these conversations. And lastly, just nurture hope and confidence that the person really knows what's right for them and their family, and helping them make those choices. So I'm going to stop there and see if we have any questions. So again, over on your Google Meet, there's the question tab. You can type in questions there if you'd like. And Carmen will certainly see them.
I don't see any questions popping up yet, so I'm wondering just if I could ask you a question, Colleen.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
oh, maybe Carmen.
I don't see any questions either. But while people are thinking or typing, we can go over the reminder of what we shared at the beginning. That sound good? Okay.
Sounds great.
All right. So use your either the chat or the question to write a question right now. In the meantime, please remember at the end you will receive an email with a survey link. This event is a CDC-funded national AHEC organization HPV project. And so we need your help. Please take a moment to complete the survey that you receive via email. We'll appreciate very much your cooperation. Again, if you need the slides because you couldn't download them or something happened, just send me an email and I'll be happy to send them to you. The webinar is being recorded and we'll be able to see it on our website within a week. And feel free to reach out to me or our office if you have any questions and concerns. We'll be happy to be of assistance. To obtain CME, log into www.eeds.com and enter the activity code 67YLEM. So again, this is the site, www.eeds.com, and that's the code. Okay, so now let's see. I find a question. Yes, we got a question. How do you backpedal when you realize you are meeting resistance and beginning to fight?
Yeah, great question. So really, you want to think about what the resistance is. If the resistance is normal, sustained language, so you're hearing reasons not to change, reasons they don't think it's possible, then you want to just reflect that you're understanding that. So it sounds like this is really hard for you. You're not really sure if HPV is right for you or your child, and you're just reflecting understanding. However, if it is relationship oriented, where they're pushing back on your judgy attitude maybe, or you're trying to convince them to do something. So in the role play where Tina and I were showing you what discord could look like, you can definitely just take a breath and apologize and reset the relationship. So Tina, I'm so sorry. It sounds like you're feeling like I'm pushing you towards a decision, or that I'm telling you what's best for you and your family. First of all, I'm so sorry. That's not my intention. What I really want to do is make sure you have the information. So let me start over. You tell me what's most important for you right now regarding HPV vaccinations for your daughter. So sometimes it's just acknowledging it, apologizing for it, reflecting what you think is happening, even just the skill of reflecting the emotion that's in a simple reflection, like you're really angry with me right now, you're feeling like I'm not understanding, even those kinds of strategies can help. Anything you'd add, Tina?
I think the only thing I would add is sometimes in doing that, that repair actually makes the relationship even stronger. And so to not, if you're feeling that resistance come up in the relationship in particular, exactly how you frame that, Colleen, sort of to pause, to, make that awareness or apology, that repair can actually really strengthen the relationship. And even though it may not feel like you nudge the needle on, moving towards HPV vaccination this visit, the strengthening of the relationship and that trust actually is laying quite a foundation for possibly being able to bring it up again. I've seen that a lot with people in discussing smoking cessation. And when you get that resistance that feels personal, you just work on the repair of the relationship.
Yeah. I would just echo that. There's so many times that in relationships and clients that I've worked with where me just even apologizing or admitting that I made a mistake, I think it connects to the human piece of them. Like they also know they make mistakes, and so they see you as human and more willing to actually have sort of an honest, open conversation with them too.
Thank you so much, Colleen, Tina. I got another comment. That's great because I'm pushing them. Doctors are so used to telling patients what to do. Now, I have another question. If someone hasn't gotten the vaccination as a child, how would you speak with an adult about receiving the vaccinations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd actually lean on you all as the experts of the HPV vaccinations to think about the specific details that you'd want to provide, but it's really in the same process and format. To be able to say, can we talk a little bit about HPV vaccinations? Here's the risk involved. You know, you're now 45 and here's the risk of not getting the HPV vaccination now, and providing whatever that clear guidance is. So you could use the frames model for sure and just be very clear about what your recommendation is, or you could use the EPE model to ask them what they already know about it and how are they thinking about it already, and then providing the information that you think is most relevant to them. But the nice thing about both models is they're sort of topic neutrals, and you get to fill in your expertise in the middle of what you think is most important for the patient, for all the different variables that you're dealing with when you have patients with, you know, different risk factors, different age, different gender, different socioeconomic background, all of those things. You can modify the clinical recommendations and fit it within the model. Tina, would you add anything?
I would like to add that if you, any of our attendees are needing information on HPV vaccine or brush up on information about it and doses and timing, we're going to be hosting You Are the Key to HPV Cancer Prevention webinar on January 21st. So keep in mind, and I will be sending an email about it, and that you'll learn a lot about HPV vaccination, the why and the hows and all that.
Great.
All right, so I'm not finding any other questions. Just thanks, great, thank you very much. So thank you so much, Tina. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you all of you that have shared your lunchtime with us and attended this webinar. And thank you so much, and have a great day.
Great.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Carmen. Thanks, everyone. Bye.